We're in chapter 15, verse 5. We're in the middle of the Song of the Sea. The Song of the Sea. Always a blessing to hear the Song of the Sea. Tomos Yechasumu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was singing, he said the deep waters would cover them. Yarduvim Tsolot Kamo Avin. They went down into the depths like a stone. This is what Rashi says. This is a very famous Rashi. What's a famous Rashi? A Rashi that I know. That's what it's called famous. Okay, so we're going to skip the first Rashi. Okay, we'll just say it, but it's very technical. Kamo yichasum. Yichasumu, Rashi saying poetically is like the word yichasum. And the Yuda Amtsais Yiseirabo. And the extra Yud in the middle is not necessary. And Rashi says there are other examples in the Torah like that. And therefore, we have to explain it. And the first Yud, Yichasumu, which normally means the future, in this case, Kach Pirshu, to Beubi Yamsuf, they were drowned in the sea, Kadesha Yachseru Amayim, so that the water should return over them and cover them. Meaning to say, the event described by would cover them took place in the future when they were sunk into the sea, and then the water came and covered over them. And then the verse states, Yichasumu ein domeh lo b'mikra b'nikudo. Rashi says there's nothing similar to this in the entire Bible with its vowelization. Usually it would be Yichas Yumu with a cholam. Well, that's strange, but our phrase actually does have a cholam. I don't know. I don't understand it. Okay. That's how we have it actually. So anyway, then
he said it's customarily vocalized with a chol.
Yeah, but that's exactly how.
And that's how we now do it. It's customarily vocalized with a chol.
We have it with a shuruk.
Yeah, we end it with a shuruk. It should be with Yichasumo, but we do it Yichasumu. And this is the only way. This is the only time it appears like this in the Bible. Rashi says. But now the next Rashi is Kamo Aven, that they sunk in the sea like stones. But elsewhere Rashi says, U'b'makom acher it says Tsalu koferes, that they sunk like lead. U'b'makom acher it says Yochlemo kakash, that they sunk like straw. So which is it?
It says stone.
What?
It says stone.
Here it says stone, but another verse in the song says like lead, and another verse says like straw. So it's one of those three. So it's which one is it? What? So Harishaim, those who are wicked, Kakash, they sunk like straw. They went up and down like straw. Can you imagine how painful a death that is? Drowning like straw. And then the Beinonim Ka'evin, the average ones sank like stone. The best ones sunk like lead. But if they're really ksherim, why are they dying?
They were mitzrim. We've been through this before.
Yeah, but these are the ksherim.
Even the good ones died.
Even the good ones died.
The good one's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Rashi said that. It might have been John Wayne.
You refused to read it for some reason. I don't know.
The next verse states, your right hand, Hashem, is majestic in might. Your right hand crushes the enemy. What does that mean? Rashi says, Yimincha. Why does it say your right hand twice? Shtei pamim. Kishe Yisrael Sinrit Somo Shel Makom. When the Jewish people do the will of God, Hasmol Na'asit Yamin. The left hand becomes the right.
It's kind of nice. So there is no weaker hand.
So they say it differently here. They say once the verse is using human imagery to describe God, we expect it to describe God with two left hands. So they say that the left hand represents, usually it's associated with the attribute of justice, whereas the right hand is associated with more, which is mercy. So the left hand, when we do the will of God, the left hand of God becomes the right. That's how the commentaries to Rashi understand it. So, do you have a question, Ben?
Not really.
Okay. What is that? Oh, that's a cryptic answer. What does not really mean?
It was an observation. I thought it was I was thinking of just the sort of contemporary idea, the left hand is weaker and the right hand is stronger. Saying you have two right hands is saying if you're doing what God tells you to do, everything is just as strong as everything else.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. That's very poetic. Your right hand, God, is majestic in its might. Israel, to save the Jewish people. Whereas the second hand, so you have two right hands. One hand saving the Jewish people, and your second right hand is crushing the enemy. And Rashi says, and to me it seems that that same hand which saves also crushes. So Rashi gives a different explanation why it's two right hands. Rashi says the right hand is doing two functions. It's saving the people and crushing the enemy at the same time.
Multitasking.
Yeah, but he said it's an impossibility because you can't do it, but God can do it. And the simplest meaning is the right hand, which is majestic in might. What is its work? Its work, meaning the simplest way to read this is your right hand, which is majestic. Why is it majestic? Because it crushes the enemy. And then Rashi gives a few examples of this. We don't have to read all the examples. That's what Rashi says. And then he says, okay, we'll go on now. Verse 7.
Isn't there Rashi and Nidari?
Yeah, but it's very, very technical grammar. So
There's another one on Tirat Oyev.
I saw that. Yeah. So Tirat Oyev, it crushes the enemy. Tamid he roetis and mishaberes Oyev. The right hand is constantly breaking the enemy. That's how you read it. V'domelo vayer atzu vayerotetzu et bnei Israel. So basically, we have a big problem with these verses because we're not used to poetry. So Rashi feels the need to tell us how to read it because otherwise we don't know how to read it. And for sure, we should read this. We should know how to read it because every day Ashkenazic Jews, I don't know if Sephardic Jews, but Ashkenazic Jews say this as Yashir in our prayers.
Yes,
Right.
also Sephardi Jews.
Sephardic Jews say it too. Davar acher yimincha nederes bakoach. Your right hand, which is majestic, he mishaberet umarka oyev. It breaks and smites the enemy. Okay. Verse 7. Uverov gaoncha taros kamecha. With your grandeur, you devastate your opponents. Tisharach haroncha. You send forth your anger, yochemu kakash, and it consumes them like straw. Rashi says, what does this mean? Uberov gancha, in your abundance of your grandeur. Im hayad bilvad roetzet hayoyev. If the hand alone crushes the enemy, kishu mirima berov gaono, when he raises it in the abundance of his grandeur, then it will devastate those who rise up against him. The imbirov go no. What does that mean? It's saying, hello, Jeff. So it's saying if the hand alone crushes the enemy, when he raises it in the abundance of his grandeur, then it will devastate those who rise against him. It's just translating. The imbirov go no levad oivav narasim. And if in the abundance of his grandeur alone, his enemies are devastated, okay, so Rashi says, if when he is just showing his grandeur alone, he's able to devastate the enemies, for sure when he's being angry, he's able to completely devastate the enemies.
But the first explanation, it sounds like almost like a hammer. That when you lift it, you're going to bring it down and with even more force.
Exactly. And then it says, Taros kamecha, you devastate your opponents. Rashi says, Tamida taros kamecha means that you always are devastating those who rise against you. Hakamim negdecha. And who are these people who rise against you? Mi'em hakamim kenegdo. Elu hakamim Yisrael. These are the ones who rise up against Israel. V'cheinu omer kinei oivecha yamayun. What is this thronging? Against your people, they plot a conspiracy. And this is they're called the enemies of God. So who does God destroy? Those who plot against the Jewish people. Okay. And then it states in the next verse, with the breath of your nostrils, the water is piled up. I remember this scene from Superman, when he breathes and everybody, they got it from here. The person who wrote Superman went to Hebrew school. So he must have read these verses. The wall stood like a wall stood the running water. The deep water is congealed in the heart of the sea. Rashi tells us, what does it mean with the breath of your nostrils? The water is piled up. What does that mean? This is the breath that comes out of both nostrils of the nose. It piled up the water. The verse speaks of the divine presence as it would about a king of flesh and blood. So as to let the ear of men hear that which is common. Rashi saying, God obviously, Rashi saying, doesn't have nostrils. So why is Rashi saying this? So Rashi saying the Torah is speaking about it so that people can understand, because otherwise you can't understand it. It's all metaphorical. So Rashi is saying when a person gets angry, the wind comes out of his nostrils. Like when you see somebody literally flaring, that's the way they do it. When a person rages, his breath is long, and when he's angry, his breath is short. When his rage subsides, his breath is long. When he's angry, it's short. Okay. All right, he goes through each expression. Ner mumayim, the water is piled up. Unclus explains it to mean lashon armimus, expression of cleverness. Lashon sachuta mikra, the clearest explanation of the verse, like aremat chitim, a bundle of wheat. Ner mumayim, the water is piled up. Mimoked ruach sheyatza me'apcha, from the heat of the breath that went out of your nostrils. You have shua mayim, the water is dried up. The waters became like waves and heaps of piles of grain, which are very high. I remember when I was like maybe 7 or 8, I was reading, though they had this book my parents bought me called The Midrash Says, where they used to get all these midrashim and weave into a story. And I remember reading the midrashim about the Az Yashir, and they pull down like this about the splitting of the sea, like they telling these stories about how the waves were so high they turned into the waters dried up and became high like waves. Kimonade. Rashi says kashur kachoma. It's like a wall. We'll skip the next Rashi. Okay. So then, Amaro Yev Ardof Hasig. Oh, wait. The water is congealed. What does it mean? Rashi says the water is congealed. Here, share, you can sit here if you want. What does it mean the water is congealed? Kamo v'chagvina takfieni. like the word takfiyeni, shukshuv asu kavanim, the waters became hardened and like stones. V'amayim zorkim es hamitzrim ala even bekoach. And the waters would cast the Egyptians against the stones forcefully. The nilchamim ba mikol minei koshi, and they would battle against the Egyptians with all sorts of rigor. So the water itself became hardened, and the waters would throw the Egyptians against the stones. So the waters were actually fighting the Egyptians. I don't know. Amar Oyev, the enemy said, verse 9, we said that. Amar Oyev, Ardof Hasig, I will pursue them and I will overtake them. Achalek Shalom, I'll divide up the booty. Timo'emu Nafshi, my soul will be filled. Arich Harbi, I will draw my sword. Torishemu Yadi, my hand will impoverish them. What's going on here? She says, Amar Oyev, the enemy said, La'amo kishepitam b'dvarim. I guess Pharaoh was trying to convince them with words. Erdof asigim v'chalek shalal im sarei v'avadai. He says, I'll pursue them, I'll overtake them, and I shall divide plunder with my ministers and my servants. He was encouraging them to go drown. Tim la'emo, it'll be filled with them. Titmalei mehem, they'll be filled. Nafshi, my soul. Ruchi rutzoni, my spirit and my will. All right. Rashi says, Nasha, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to make an executive decision here. Bear with me. These Rashis are too technical to do in this context, so we're going to skip to the end of the Song of the Sea.
Does Rashi not comment? I guess he didn't, because we didn't comment on this, that Nachshon. Like, it seems like his version of the events of the wind and the thing, there's the other versions that, like, the sea didn't split and Nachshon had to go in.
So where does Rashi say that? Rashi says that later on. He doesn't say that here, but he says that later on.
Okay.
He's going to say that.
I was wondering when that comes.
He's going to say when Nachshon gets the reward, he's going to say why Nachshon did it.
Well, he's saying that the wind sort of did it when we're describing what happened. And it seemed like it was sort of a non.
He's going to say that later. We'll come across that. I forget which parsha, but I know it's later in this story. Okay, let's skip a little bit to
Verse 19 or 20.
verse 20. Yeah, verse 20. So the verse states, "Vatikach Miriam Neviah, and Miriam the prophetess took Achot Aaron, she was the sister of Aaron, et HaTof biyada, she took the tof. The tof is this musical instrument in her hand. Vatetzena kol and Hashem acharah betupim cholos, and all the women followed after her with tambourines and with dances." What does it mean? Rashi says, "Vatikach Miriam Neviah." Rashi says, "Hecha nitnaba," because Rashi's bothered. Why does it say that Miriam the prophetess is the sister of Aaron? It should say she's the sister of Moses. Why is she identified with Aaron? So Rashi tells us, Hecha nitnaba, where did she prophesy? Kishaita achot Aaron, when she was the sister of Aaron. Kodem shenoad Moshe, before Moshe was born. Amra, she said, Atida imi sheteled ben b'kul k'deisa b'sota. She was the one who prophesied. She was the first one to prophesize about the redemption. And so that's why she is the one who has the timbrels, because she believed deeper than the men. So she's the one who gave the prophecy. She had the vision about the prophecy more so than anybody else. She was the first one to have the vision of redemption. That was Miriam. Davar acher, alternatively, why does it say Achos Aaron? Why is she called the sister of Aaron and not Moses? Lefisha Maser Navsho Allah Kishanitz Tar that when Miriam got Sarat, then Aaron is the one who was acted in a sacrificial manner on her part. He is the one who was dedicated to saving her. And therefore she's Nikra al Shemo. She's called by his name. I don't know exactly. He prayed for her. He advocated for her. Yes,
It
Shoshana.
also says here that in certain instances, women are referred to as the sister of the eldest brother in the family. So
Oh, is that Steinsaltz?
Yeah.
Who's his source for that?
Rashbam.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Rashbam, very nice. Rashbam is Rashi's grandson. So he's saying a third explanation. So we now have three explanations. One is because she prophesied. When was her prophecy? Before Moses was born. Number two is she's called sister of Aaron because he advocated for her. And the third explanation is because, third explanation, as Shoshana said, is that because he was the eldest brother. Then Rashi says she took it, and then the verse says she took in her hand the tof biyada. Rashi says, what's a tof? Kli shalmine zemer. It's a musical instrument. Okay. Fine, thank you. Betubimum cholos, with tambourines and dancing. Rashi says, this is one of my favorite Rashis. How come the woman had the musical instruments? You know the explanation? Rashi says, Muftachot, hayu tzidkaniot shabador shakadosh baruch hu oselam nisim, hotziu tupim mitzrayim. The women, in the righteous women, were so certain that God was going to perform miracles for them that they took the musical instruments from Egypt. The men were taking the gold and the silver, but the women said, we're going to need to celebrate. So they took the musical instruments.
When it says the righteous women in English, does it mean of the women, only those who are righteous brought the timbrels, or just the women who were all righteous brought the timbrels?
It's in Rashi. The term is in from Rashi. They translate that in English, or adopting Rashi, means to say the righteous women of that generation were the ones who brought the timbrels.
That would necessarily mean all the women.
So some
Means the righteous women. Unless he's saying that all the women of that generation are righteous.
Rashi doesn't say that. He says the righteous woman of the generation.
the men, it was all the men who got the gold, right?
Except for Moshe. Moshe didn't get the gold. He got the bones of Joseph. You had a question, Jeff? Okay. Vatan lahem Miriam. Oh, this is a beautiful pasuk. And Miriam, Vatan lahem Miriam, Shiru Hashem ki goga sus v'achora mavayam. And Miriam responded to them, sing to God, because he is exalted. Horse and the chariots he threw in the sea. That Miriam, by the way, the men, they had 19 verses. Miriam did it in 6 words. Shiru Hashem ki goga, that's 5. Sus v'achora mavayam, 8 words. Rashi says, Moshe Amar Shiru Anashim, Hu Omer Behem Onina Acharav, Miriam Amar Shiru Anashim. Moses sang with the men, he sang irresponsibly, he sang and they responded, and Miriam sang to the women. So basically what Rashi is saying that this is not the whole song of Miriam, this is just an excerpt of the song. Miriam sang a much greater song, but this was just a portion of it.
This repeated the whole thing.
Maybe he repeated the entire Az Yashir. But she says, Moses says, Ashiru Hashem. Moses says, I will sing, and she says, Shiru Hashem. So it's similar, but she's putting it in third person, whereas Moses is in the first person.
In general, there aren't too many words that are said by women in the whole Torah. So, like, I actually wrote a paper once that Rebecca is the least of the 4 mothers who spoke. Like, and she actually was the one that it says that Yitzchak loved her. It doesn't say it about any of the other people in the Tanakh. So,
And after the matriarchs, who else speaks? Which women speak after the matriarchs? I mean, after the matriarchs, we have. Well, no, we have the
wife of
mothers,
Potiphar.
the midwives, We have the daughters of Tzlachad is an individual. Who speaks as an individual?
The wife of Potiphar.
Okay, she's doing a sin. So who speaks when they're not doing a sin?
Miriam.
That's it.
Although Miriam also speaks when she's doing sin.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
But it's
so,
also here, it's like a direct quote. Okay, now, speaking of sinning, we're gonna get straight into it. Vayasa Moshe es Yisrael
Thank
miyam
you.
Tuf. And Moshe traveled from the Yam Tuf, Vayitzu al Midbar Shur, and they went towards the Midbar Shur, Vayachu Shoshes Yamim Bamidbar v'lo matzu mayim. And they went for 3 days in the wilderness and they didn't find water. Rashi says, Hey Sion Bal Karcha, Moshe caused them to go against their will. She'itru Mitzrim Etzuseim, because the Egyptians had put jewelry on their horses. B'tachshite zahav, v'kesav avanim tovos u'margolios. The Egyptians had put ornaments of gold, silver, and precious stones. V'ayu yosriel otzieno tam b'yam. And the Jewish people were finding all this gold and silver at the sea. Ugedola aita bizat hayam bizat Mitzrayim. The spoils of Egypt were greater than the spoils of the sea were greater than the spoils of Egypt.
What's the source for that?
Right now, as it says, Torei zahav naselach in the kudot hakesef. Necklaces of gold we will make with you, along with spangles of silver. That's the Song of Songs 111. And Rashi there explains that the necklaces of gold are the spoils at the Sea of Reeds, which are greater value than the spangles of silver.
But how do we know that? I mean, it
Um,
seems kind of made up.
well, therefore, Moshe had to take them against their will. He didn't have to take them against their will from Egypt, but he had to take them against their will from here. So, okay, maybe we'll stop here. Okay, beautiful. Next Rashi is very, very powerful, but we'll stop here. Big shkoyach to everybody. And the neshama should have an aliyah.